We're here to examine the growing role of law enforcement in responding to incidents involving persons with disabilities. State and local law enforcement have made great progress in combating violent crime and keeping communities safe. In recent years, law enforcement has been forced to shoulder a new challenge. Due to inadequate mental health and social services, police officers have many times become the first responders for disabled individuals in crisis. The deinstitutionalization movement has led to many disabled Americans released from state and local institutions into the community, and a large reduction of available inpatient beds. It's estimated the country has lost 90% of its public psychiatric beds since the deinstitutionalization movement began. The goal is certainly laudable. However, there's never been adequate funding to allow local service providers to care for the disabled Americans living in their communities. And in recent years, there have been draconian cuts in their meager budgets. As a result, police officers, sheriff's deputies, and troopers have been inundated with calls involving mentally ill persons. And with the reduction in inpatient bed space, our jails and prisons have become, sadly, our mental health institutions by default. This subcommittee has considered this issue in a 2009 hearing on mental illness in prison and jails. More recently, in 2 hearings on the use of solitary confinement. An estimated 56.2% of the inmates in state prison, 56.2%, have mental illness. 44.8% of inmates in federal prison. Our focus today is the difficult challenge state and local law enforcement face in responding to incidents with individuals suffering from disabilities. This is a public safety issue. Numerous studies have found that at least half of the people shot and killed by police each year are mentally ill. And police officers are at risk as well. Many of us well remember the day in 1998 when a mentally ill man stormed the halls of this Capitol and fatally shot 2 Capitol Hill police officers who heroically confronted him and saved many lives in the process. This is also a civil rights issue. The Americans with Disabilities Act requires law enforcement agencies to make reasonable modifications to ensure that disabled Americans are not subjected to discriminatory treatment. And just this month, the Justice Department Civil Rights Division found a local police department was required to implement certain remedial measures to protect the constitutional rights of disabled Americans. As is so often the case, state and local governments are leading the way in crafting innovative solutions. One promising approach we're going to hear about is the Crisis Intervention Team. It has 2 parts. First, training officers to recognize the signs of disabilities and to de-escalate a crisis incident involving a disabled person. Second, a law enforcement building relationship with mental health and development disability communities. These relationships are critical to finding support and services for the disabled. Today, there are more than 2,700 CIT programs in 48 states. Nationwide, localities with CIT programs are experiencing a noticeable decline in officer injuries, injuries to disabled citizens, and reduced detention rates. Proud to say Illinois is one of the nation's leaders in this area. 49 counties in my state out of the 102 have a CIT program. And we'll hear today from the Chicago Police Department CIT program, which is considered a national model. As local mental health and disability services become increasingly scarce, the burden on police officers is going to be even larger. It's incumbent on Congress and the executive branch to help local and state law enforcement shoulder this expanded role and develop practices that protect officers, disabled individuals, and the public. Now, I might say at the outset that we have a series of votes on the floor at 11 o'clock this morning, 6 in a row. And then the mandatory lunches follow of the Democratic and Republican caucuses. So we have a hard stop of 11:15. So we're going to do our best to give everyone a chance to testify and entertain questions, and then proceed from that point. Senator Cruz, when he arrives, will be given an opportunity for an opening statement when he does arrive. Our first witness I'd like to welcome is Denise O'Donnell, Director of the Justice Department's Bureau of Justice Assistance. The BJA provides grants and policy development services to local, state, and tribal criminal justice programs. Prior to her tenure with the BJA, Director O'Donnell was Deputy Secretary for Public Safety in New York and Commissioner of the New York State Division of Criminal Justice Services, and before that, U.S. Attorney for the Western District of New York. Director O'Donnell, thank you for being here. We're going to give you 5 minutes for an opening statement, and your complete written statement will be made part of the record.